Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Magic Pause podcast. It's your host here, Annalena. And today I'm going to talk all about podcasting, and especially for those of you that are empath or you consider yourself as a highly sensitive person or introvert. I think oftentimes we can also connect with all of these things. Also, if you can relate to the term a scattered mind, which I think Gabor Mate brought into the world, or even the term ADHD, where you kind of feel like you're just too much all over the place and everything. So if these are terms that speak to you, then this episode is especially for you. And also, of course, if you are somebody that wants to make a difference in the world and you probably find yourself not quite fitting into the traditional corporate 9 to 5, you just feel like you have this bigger calling on your heart. If this means, being a coach, being somebody that puts on retreats, that changes the world in whatever way or form there is, there's so many things, right? If it's more working with local communities, writing books, being on stages, but really actively changing the world through sharing unique message with the world. And probably you feel that you have this entrepreneurial heart, right, where you just know you're doing things a little bit differently than what we have seen or currently are seeing in mainstream, right? When we get to college, we get a degree, we get a job, we retire. So you kind of feel like, no, I need to break out of this matrix and create it on my own terms so you can also experience more freedom. So how does podcasting all go into this? So first I want to tell you a little bit also about my journey. I have been an entrepreneur now for, it's going into the 7th year actually, which is quite exciting. And I was working in corporate for a really long time, and I felt exactly like I was describing, like I don't belong here. There's something way bigger for me that I need to pursue. It was really something so strongly coming from my heart. And eventually it happened. Some of you know the story. I got fired from my corporate job. And while it was scary, it was the best thing that ever happened for me. And so I started my entrepreneurial journey. And of course, I didn't have all the answers. I was trying to figure it out. And I was listening to what people were saying. I saw some ads. I, talked to some people, what they recommended. And I invested heavily into working with other coaches and programs so that, I could make a living from this, because this is obviously something that is important, especially if you don't have a corporate job or some other source of income coming in. If you only have your own business or entrepreneurship endeavor, then, for it to be sustainable, we also need to make money with it to pay our regular bills and whatever lifestyle is desirable for yourself. So I found myself quite frustrated because I was following a lot of advice that I heard out there, and I thought I have to crack this marketing code, and there's some people having all the secrets out there, like, some magic trick that you have to apply. And I also had this idea that I have to invest a lot of money to follow somebody else's footprint. And that just didn't quite work for me. And over the years, I learned that I have to really step into who I am, right? I have to stop following what everybody else is trying to tell me I should do. And it's not that they're telling me, I was just really taking it in too much, and I was losing myself in that, and I was focusing everything outside of myself rather than focusing on me. And one of the biggest things for me has always been my throat center, my throat chakra. Even as a child growing up, I actually had some thyroid issues, which of course the thyroid chakra, I mean the throat chakra. And I remember I never felt like I could fully express myself, because there were some things that were happening as I was growing up, where I created the story that it's not safe to speak my truth. Something that I can remember is like silent treatment. When I did speak my truth, I did point something out, then people stopped talking to me. And that was just very, very painful. So, of course, I tried to avoid this by all means. So, kind of being quiet was oftentimes a safe place for me. I think this is also why I really immersed myself into studying. I was always really good in school in terms of grades and also in college because it was very mental and just taking in things and then taking exams. But mainly again, it was all in the writing and the memorization and everything. I didn't have to predominantly use my voice, you know? And then, of course, in relationships, as I grew older, I started to see a pattern there that, you know, I wasn't speaking my truth and I was allowing myself to be in situations where I was holding back and I wasn't fully happy, you know? And so the more I learned over time to speak up for myself, to speak my truth, to say what I want, to say things, even though, you know, I knew that maybe other people are not gonna like it or resonate with it, like risking to be rejected. You know, I could have never imagined doing this growing up, but over time I started to implement this one, especially in my personal relationship first. And when I faced that fear of rejection in my personal relationships, that's when I really noticed things are starting to dramatically shift for me. And I was like, oh, okay, if this works so well in my personal relationships, then maybe this is also really important in my business, right? Being an entrepreneur. And so over now, it's 3 years ago, almost exactly for the date of this episode, I finally made this decision because it kept coming to me over and over again. And if you know this from human design, like we're here to respond to life, right? So podcasting was just something that really spoke to me. And I had already played a little bit or experimented, let's put it this way, with a YouTube channel before. I did it for, I think, a few months and then I stopped it. I think I got a little bit scared. But I knew that I love to talk and communicate, especially also with other people. And so, long story short, I finally decided to launch a podcast. And at the time, I had tremendous support. I wasn't a mastermind. I was surrounded by other ambitious, introverted, highly sensitive entrepreneurs that were also doing very similar things. So, it was then in January 2022 that I launched, at the time, it was called the Art of Slowing Down podcast. And if you know by now, we're still here. Now it's called the Magic Pause. We just several months ago relaunched just to a slightly different name. And I have been doing weekly episodes, like I said, for 3 years now. It's over, I think, 170 or 180 episodes total by now. And it was literally the best thing ever. And I tell you especially why, because it has helped me to discover my own voice. Especially as a highly sensitive person, I have found that I'm highly susceptible to other people's opinions, you know, and what are other people thinking? What are their views? And how should you be doing things? So I have always noticed I can just lose myself. And recently I had a conversation with a client, and I want to also share this with you because I thought it was really powerful. So imagine like your opinions or your view of the world is this little red drop, right? If it's blood or some food color or some red color or watercolor. We used to do that when I was a child. And that's who you are, what you stand for. And then once you put this into this big bucket of water or like a lake or the ocean, like it totally dissolves and you no longer see it and it's gonna mix with everything, right? And this is kind of how I saw it with like who I am in especially this online world as an entrepreneur. There on social media, you get bombarded with so much content, with so many opinions and everything, you know. And so once I started to consume, I literally felt like this little drop of red color that was all of a sudden being sucked into all these other different opinions. And I didn't even know anymore what I was standing for. Right. And so with starting my own podcast, I really shifted because I had to out of mainly being a consumer and being more of a creator, where I was like, okay, I am here to share what I stand for. I'm here to talk about what lights me up, what I'm really passionate about, and share this with the world. And, you know, there is a level of commitment, obviously. So consistency is a big theme here, which we could just talk about for probably the entire episode, but I made this commitment. I was like, I am going to do this. I'm going to show up at least every other week, which then quickly turned into, or right away into weekly, anyways. But because I made this commitment, and of course, it wasn't always easy. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I don't want to do it. But are we going to grow like this? Probably not, right? So I really think if we're really being serious about making a difference in the world, then we have to commit to something in some way that is somewhat consistent. And yeah, it was just podcasting for me. So, and I think oftentimes we also get this idea that, well, why even bother? Because there's so many podcasts out there. And we think that a podcast is mainly only here to get clients or to make X amount of money and or chasing some kind of success stories because we may compare ourselves with others like, well, I'm never going to make it like this person that has this huge podcast and this huge following, right? To be honest, for me, that's not what it's about initially at all. This may happen, yes, as a side effect quickly or later on or never, and it's okay too. But mainly what a podcasting or being a podcast host for me is about is for yourself, for your own development of your own voice and truly becoming a creator in this space. Because again, if you're serious about making a change in the world through your unique perspectives, there has to be somehow a shift from not being mainly a creator and really being a consumer and shifting more into being a creator, right? I think we can consume some content, but if you feel like, especially again, as an empathic, highly sensitive person, that it's not doing you good and you kind of you're excited about talking about something or you really feel called to share something or write about something and then all of a sudden you consume content and it totally takes the energy away. If that's happening for you, I think it's actually very important to make a little bit more of a drastic cut and stop consuming all this stuff so that you can find through taking some magic pauses your own voice, you know? And the other thing is, I think we often have this idea that we want it to happen quickly, or we think, well, it's going to take forever. Why even bother? Because I know we humans, we like to see the result right away. The reality, though, is it does take time. If you want to build a business, create truly impact in this world, if that's on a smaller scale or on a global level, it will take time. You know, even when you see these big success stories out there, when people sometimes talk about, you know, what they have all achieved, which again are these success metrics in terms of how many downloads they have, how many likes, how many followers, or things like that, you know, most likely it has taken quite some time, often many, many years, you know? So, same for me. My podcast has been in the making for many years now. And I could also tell myself, oh, because I don't have as many downloads as I should have. Um, Once you have your podcast for 3 years, like why bother? But you know, for me, the level of confidence that I have personally stepped in through my podcasting journey, oh my gosh, that alone is absolutely worth it. And even today, when I start to record a podcast, I still feel sometimes a little bit nervous, believe it or not. But it's a totally different kind of nervousness, you know, and the amount of clarity I have also received from recording podcast episodes. So, for example, when I go onto social media, and Instagram is probably the social media account that I use the most to also connect with my audience. And I have been liking it, I have been loving it. But if I'm being honest, podcasting and speaking is so much more preferable to me than just posting silently on my Instagram account. Because I notice it in my energy when I record the podcast, when I speak, I actually find it energizes me and I feel better about myself. And when I mainly focus on writing very long carousel posts on Instagram, I have noticed it starts to drain more my energy. And there was a time where I felt a little bit different, but over the last year especially, I have felt a big shift there. And this is also why I have decided to post less on my Instagram, but still very aligned, high quality content and focus even more on using my voice and, you know, sharing through speaking what I want to share. And so one of the things that I have also noticed is that when I record a podcast episode, I can actually, fully articulate and get all this stuff out of my head because there's so much going on. And also with artificial intelligence, AI, that is so much on the rise, I also believe that podcasting makes you stand out so much more in terms of using your voice rather than only writing, because with AI, we can create some pretty darn written content these days that almost really, it sounds very natural, it sounds very authentic. I don't want to say it can replicate when you really pour out your heart how you're writing, but I do find that the frequency of your voice, and again, I don't know how advanced AI is going to be, but at least from what I have seen and heard, when I see a video that it's made with AI, it's just so weird. It's so off. And there's something very special when you can actually listen to a real person talking. It's the most attractive thing to me. And it's also the most repelling to me when I feel like there's like a robot behind it, or just some computer algorithm that has created it. So yeah, and it also helps you, I think, to really connect to your ideal audience at such a deeper level, because I truly believe that any business that is really successful in the world is through genuine connections with their audience, where people can really relate to you, where you connect from your heart through your story, through your unique views of the world, what you stand for. And I think it's so much easier to convey this through using your voice. And again, if this is just audio, if this is through video content, because the beautiful thing also with the podcast is that, now you have this content and you can not only distribute it to all the beautiful podcasting platforms, by the way, almost totally for free. That's where the technology is really beautiful these days. You can also, if you use the video, which is something I didn't do in the beginning, but for the last year I've been doing it. And now also you put it onto YouTube, or even Spotify these days has a video version of their podcast. And now you're also going to have access to all the beautiful people, or they have access to you and find you with so much more ease, And you can also create social media content from this. So you can create with very simple, easy to use tech tools. You can create little snippets of your podcast, if that's just the voice or the actual video. And now here you go, you also have social media content at the same time. So the other thing is you can also create a blog post from it. Again, with the technology we have access today, for a very small fee, you can, from just having your voice, you can create a transcript, and you can, with the help of AI, create beautiful blog posts. And it's all going to be your own voice, right? Because you were the one speaking on the podcast, or if that's a conversation with another person that you have had. So obviously, you can probably tell that I love podcasting. And seriously, this hands down was the best decision I ever made in my business. That's when I really felt that things are starting to shift. Because if I look at my journey before the podcast, I felt a little bit lost. I really always felt like I was searching for something. And even though I had already human design in my pocket, that definitely felt empowering. And I think it was in human design, the understanding of how it works, right? Really trusting myself, following what lights me up and drew me into podcasting. And even though it felt scary, I took that leap of faith in some way and I stayed consistent. And from that point on, I really started to notice how my confidence was slowly, surely, consistently going up. And it was just getting in better and better. And of course, this then also flew into the offers that I put out into the world, into my pricing, into really everything that I'm doing today, and also the connections that I have made through my podcast. That in itself, I don't even think I can put a price tag on it. It's probably beyond what my little mind can comprehend. And the other side effects, of course, I have many, many people that book human design readings with me, or they start to work with me one-on-one, and they for the most part tell me, yeah, also listen to your podcast, or they heard about me through another person because they have shared about my podcast, because that's something that starts to happen. Like, you have a podcast, somebody loves it, and people share on their Instagram bios like, hey, check out this podcast. And all of a sudden, you have exposure to a whole lot more people that they can find you, And I truly think also in terms of investing and spending money, I think investing in finding your unique voice and becoming really confident in that. And at the same time, you're protecting your energy more because you're more focusing on you expressing yourself rather than taking on everybody else's content. And if you keep investing into this through showing up consistently, through moving your fears, because it's a journey of consistently moving through your fears and getting out of your comfort zone, because you're going to start to up level. There's going to be a new level of guests you're going to attract or reach out to. And it's just a really beautiful journey. And at some point, it can happen that it totally exponentially takes off. I think that usually happens when we're not looking for it, when you're fully enjoying the journey of being a podcaster, of sharing your unique voice and your truth with the world. And also from the Gene Keys, we have this concept of your soul fractal. And especially in one gene key, it's called the culture sphere, which in human design is your unconscious Jupiter. This energy, Richard Rudd talks about that oftentimes here is where we can unlock some or release some prosperity blocks, right? That are holding us back from also tapping into more financial abundance in our life. And this all has also to do, this energy, with our soul fractal, right? Because when we are more in tune with this energy, so just to give you an example, mine is the Gene Key 6, which in the shadow is all about the fear of rejection, obviously, right? So as I move through this, you're going to start to really connect more and more with your soul fractal. And then you're also going to open up so much more abundance for yourself. And I really believe that a podcast, no matter what your Gene Key is and that position in your Gene Keys profile, that you have such a beautiful platform, which, by the way, a podcast, you own this platform, right? If social media goes down tomorrow, you have nothing. If you have your podcast, you are the owner of your podcast. It's your own marketing platform. And with that, so many people can find you. So, I mean, podcasting, anybody that has a cell phone these days, they can find you. Then also, if you decide to even go onto YouTube, I mean, millions and billions of people can find you. We really live in an age where it is literally cheaper than ever, even though, I know expenses are going up everywhere. And I think it's important also to invest into certain things at certain times. But when it comes to like, starting a business and building a solid foundation, life has made it easier than ever, or God, source, universe, right? For us to actually share our unique voice, opinions, and views with the world. And the only thing, I think that's kind of the big price tag for us, like it's about us getting out of the comfort zone. It's about making that commitment and fully stepping into that. Now, because I know it's not easy, this is also why at some point I felt really called, like, maybe I can help people launch their own podcast. This happened actually over 2.5 years ago. And then I didn't get out with it, but I already started to play with the idea for quite some time. And then almost exactly 1 year ago, I launched my course, the Easy Podcast Launch, and I ran it twice last year. It was pretty successful. There were many people that joined. Many of them launched their podcast. And the one thing that really stood out with all the participants is that they reported that they just felt so much more confident in themselves. And if they launched their podcast or not, they really felt they were now stepping into speaking their truth. They were, showing up more consistently, and it opened up so many other opportunities for them. And I saw also many of my clients that I felt they were kind of hiding in their shell, again, especially as highly sensitive introverts. I think many of us can connect to this. And I saw them just like blooming through their podcasting journey. They were showing up more. They were speaking their truth more, even on the live calls. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do more of this, And just a week ago, one of my clients that actually launched her podcast during the first Easy Podcast launch last year, she reached out to me and she told me like, Annalena, again, thank you so much for teaching me how to podcast, because her podcast has really beautifully grown also in terms of, downloads and how many people she's reaching. And she told me that she was even inspired now to launch her second podcast that is a little bit more niche down. And it's just so beautiful for me when I receive those messages, because that's why I do what I do. It's not just for me to run a course and do this for my own sake. It's really so that I can empower you to also experience this magic that really happens when you have the courage to take the bold step of launching your podcast out into the world. And let me tell you, that's a pretty vulnerable step, right? Because we're putting all of our heart and our soul out there. And we run the darn risk of getting rejected and have people disagree with us. And I really believe this is one of the most important muscles that anyone can build in your personal life and also in the entrepreneurial world, especially because, like I was talking about the soul fractal concept, right? So just imagine that, you and I and many other people, like we have a unique gift. And as we share this gift through expressing our voice consistently out into the world, we start to attract, right? We start to connect and draw in the right kind of people. And there may be a group of people that is attracted here to Annalena, right? That really is hanging out here, and we work together, we create magic together, we support each other and create a bigger ripple effect into the world. And then there's some other people that totally don't resonate with what Annalena is talking about. They may totally resonate with what you are talking about, because it's just a resonance there. You are that soul fractal, right? And I think also over time, we may be moving from one soul fractal to another, right? So it is totally normal that some people are repelled by your message, which truly, it's a good thing. And once you can really feel this energetically, it becomes so much more joyful, this entire journey, because every time that somebody doesn't resonate your message, you know that, okay, beautiful. This is creating space for other people to come to me that are actually resonating with my message, right? It's just like when you have a house and everything is really messy, very cluttered, and you're thinking, oh, let me get some new furniture, but it just doesn't fit. And when you have the courage to let go of some old furniture that just doesn't light you up anymore, then there is space for some new furniture to come into your life. And you may also then all of a sudden find a good deal online because you had an eye on something, but it had to wait until you also have the energetic capacity for for this furniture in this case to come into your life. And for me, or as an entrepreneur, it's the aligned group of people or clients or people to collaborate with, right? That you then start to attract into your life. Another example from my journey last year. So I started on my podcast to talk about my journey of true sidereal all of a sudden came into my life and how it shifted so much for me, you know? And it was actually in the beginning of January 2024 where I just talked about it. It just came so strongly. And I felt so scared because I was like, OMG, are people still going to take me serious? I don't know. But I had to do it. I already had built the muscle for over 2 years to trust my truth and to share with my audience. You guys, thank you, by the way, for listening. I love and honor that you are, yeah, dedicating your time to the space here. And I shared there that I'm totally shifting into new worlds of true sidereal and how it's impacting human design and the gene keys. And this totally opened new doors for me. At the end of the year, I launched the True Sidereal Summit, which was a huge success. I started to connect through that with so many amazing humans. And I don't think if I had shared this on my podcast, I would have made such an impact or I would have connected with so many people. And let me tell you, there were some people that were like, this is nonsense and this is how it's supposed to be. And I was already like so much in my power. I was like, this is actually good. when you ruffle some feathers, when you actually see people that disagree with you, that's kind of indicating you're onto something. You have some success because you're really owning what you stand for and what feels true to you. And we're not here all to have the same opinion. We're not here to all have the same truth and all agree with each other. I think we cannot evolve as a collective if we all agree on everything, right? Because it is through noticing that something feels off, that you disagree with something, through being frustrated with the status quo, that you then find the fire within yourself to create something new. And what I noticed was super interesting as I shared my newfound love and profound connection with the true sidereal for human design, gene keys, and astrology. There were so many people that reached out to me and they thanked me for having the courage to talk about, because there were people already like 3-4 years ago that were doing the same thing with true sidereal, but they felt like it's not safe or they're going to get too much backlash, especially from the very traditional human design community. And I was a little bit in shock because I was like, wow. And then I was like, whoa, what if they would have had the courage to speak up more about it? It would have really accelerated the movement. But I was like, okay, things happen for a reason. But again, it gave me this realization of how important it is to speak our truth, to express our voice. So with that, there's also now a beautiful invitation, because this Easy Podcast Launch course that I already told you a little bit about it is launching again at the end of January. So January 29th is when we start. And you are invited to join us. I will, of course, make sure to put the link with all the details in the show notes so you can check it out to see if this is aligned for you. And just to give you a little bit of insights, it's going to be a 12-week journey to launch your own podcast. This time I'm switching it up a little bit. We're actually going to have 12 weekly live calls. Previously, we only had bi-weekly because I just want to bring in some even more support and for us to dive even deeper into also human design and gene keys, and to have more work sessions. So some of the live calls will actually be working on things to get your podcast out into the world. You're also going to have also the tech stuff and everything. So can help you troubleshoot there. You're also going to have 12 weeks access to a private Telegram group where you and all the participants are going to be, and I'm here to coach you. Also, you can support each other as well. But oftentimes the biggest questions or roadblocks appear between the calls. So this is what it's for. You will also have the option to download all the content, the audios and the slides and everything, because you're going to have access to the online portal for a year. But again, you can download everything. So then you have it for life. And there's also going to be some incredible bonuses that are here to support you on the podcasting journey. And why is now the time? Well, I don't know, because I always think, especially when it comes to building a foundation, I think we always wish like we would have started yesterday or like a year ago, right? So I really think now is the best time, especially with the rise of AI, right? Where we're going to experience more and more cookie cutter content and more inauthenticity. I really believe that your unique voice is needed more than ever. And again, if you're looking to be more confident in your personal life, in your professional life, if it's being an entrepreneur, or even if you're still working in the corporate world, I really think having a podcast is literally like the best thing ever. I would recommend it to anyone. And again, I don't even think there's too many podcasts out there, because again, the ones that are for you, they will find you, right? And the ones that are for somebody else, they will more be polarized to some other person. So yeah, with that, the invitation is here. You're also super welcome to reach out to me via email. That's bloom@annalenafuchs.com. Or you can send me a message on my Instagram. That's how I usually reply the best. So if you have any kind of questions about the Easy Podcast Launch course, you are more than welcome to send them over to me. And maybe you also have some other questions when it comes to launching your own podcast. Maybe some things you want to know from my journey that I didn't share today. I always love to hear your questions. And with that, I am wishing you a wonderful week ahead. And again, I want to thank you so much for listening. And also, if you want to subscribe or leave me a review on this podcast, it also tremendously helps because it just helps the algorithms to get my podcast out into the world so more people become aware of it. So thank you for that as well if you choose to do so. And I'm sending you all my love and all my blessings. And I'm super excited to be with you all on the next episode. Bye, everyone.